I remember the first time I discovered Godzilla. It was through the Hanna-Barbera cartoon shows that got me into it. I was in the right age when I was into monsters fighting each other and causing havoc in the city, like the Power Rangers. It just made for some awesome toys. Heck, I've even kept safe some of my Godzilla drawings I made way back in 5th grade. How childish of me! Through the years, I've seen different variations of Godzilla since the original 1954. He's been the hero, the villain, and... whatever that is. He's been a political statement, he's been an action star, Americanized, rebooted, and has been inserted into our pop culture ever since. Over the years, Godzilla movies have been viewed as mediocre monster B movies with bad-looking costumes, but with its long track record of sequels, reboots, shared universe, and more movies coming out, as well as being included into the Criterion Collection, a company that preserves classic art films as important, this has given a whole different respect to the Godzilla movies. I mean, who would have ever thought that this, or this, or even this, would have been considered as cinema? Is there more to Godzilla than just being monsters on the loose? I'll be taking a brief look into Godzilla's history and compare the original to its recent Japanese remake from 2016, Shin Godzilla, because they both tried to say something important and give a whole lot of depth to the monster. So let's get into it. Godzilla, Shin Godzilla. What did they have in common? They were made due to Americans. In 1954, Godzilla was made as a response to the US dropping an atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki 10 years before in World War II, leading up to the Japanese surrender. The US militia ruled censorship over any mention of the atomic bomb. After the Americans left, Japanese films came out tackling how nuclear weapons devastated the Japanese people. Godzilla was the most popular to represent nuclear weapons for its destructive nature and the movie's references to the atomic bomb. The monster's skin-like appearance was based off from the Japanese skin burns they suffer from radiation. That same year, before the film was released, America dropped a hydrogen bomb close to a Japanese boat. The crew members got severely ill, and one of them died. So the opening scene of Godzilla would have reminded Japanese audiences about the hydrogen bomb that same year. Godzilla not only started the monster genre in Japan, but it continued the tackling issue of nuclear weapons in B-movies from the 50s that brought gigantic mutated monsters, humanoids, and aliens. Regardless, the original Godzilla had a deeply felt message that did not hold back from recreating the devastating images of the atomic bomb and man's inclination for mass destruction. In the Americanized version, it was heavily re-edited for its American audience. Let's just say it felt like Lion King 1.5, where they add an American reporter as an observer in every scene when you know he wasn't there in the original.
I'm afraid my Japanese is a little rusty.
It can work as a different point of view as to how other foreign worlds reacted to Godzilla. But as a solo movie, it's an abysmal for cutting important dialogue that focus on the dangers of nuclear weapons and its overall message. That message in the end does not appear in the American version. The sequel to Godzilla Raids Again would star the genre of monsters colliding with each other, from the likes of King Kong and fan favorite Mothra. Godzilla started as a villain and would remain as a villain until his 5th appearance in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, where he had to team up with Mothra and Ronan to defeat his biggest rival in the whole series, Ghidorah, ultimately cementing him as a hero. By the time we got to the 60s and 70s, Toho took a more campy, more kid-friendly approach to the character that made him seem more human, including being a father figure to this disgusting creature, showed a lot of personality, maybe a little too much. Regardless of how crazy the sequels got with the overuse of monsters, even bringing out aliens into the mix, or how cheap the costumes looked and the over-the-top characters, it was one of the most successful periods the Godzilla series ever had. But by 1975, Toho would retire the character in terror of Mechagodzilla, ending what is known as the Showa era of Godzilla. 10 years later, Toho rebooted the character back to its original roots as the main villain causing havoc in the city in Godzilla 1985, starting off what is known as the Heisei era. Until sequels later, he would once again turn into the hero and fight for humanity, whenever he had to face a monster more powerful than him like Ghidorah, Space Godzilla, Destroya, in order to survive. Once humanity was safe, he would go back wiping them all out. In 1995, Toho would once again retire the character in Godzilla vs. Destroya after Godzilla fights to the death in order to avenge the killing of its son by Destroya. It was a sad yet satisfying ending that has been considered by Godzilla fans as one of the best of the series. And then it turns out his son was still alive, so he died for nothing. The Americans would try their version of the character in 1998, to their critical disappointment from the Americans and from the disdain the Japanese felt for it. So much that when Toho got the right for the 1998 Godzilla, they did not hold back to express how their Godzilla is the definitive version. Every time the Americans tried to make their version, Toho would revive the character, starting the Millennium era of Godzilla. In 2014, the Americans tried once again to recreate Godzilla for their shared monster universe that will lead up to Godzilla vs. King Kong movie. While it is a better improvement from the 1998 version, Toho said, "Oh no, we can do better than that." And that's when in 2016, Shin Godzilla was released, being a critical and box office success, and even won a Best Picture in Japan. This would again reboot the character back to its original roots as the main villain, but with a few updates. We just have to wait for the next sequel so he might turn into the hero again. I'm just not sure how I'm gonna root for him looking like this. Aside from the monster being the main villain, or created by nuclear weapons,
what's this thing's energy source?
Maybe the answer is nuclear fission.
Shin Godzilla not only attempts to return the monster back to its original dark themes of survival, but back to its original horror roots. As much as they fall into the science fiction genre, and later into the action genre, the original was meant to be horror. Not based on scare jumps, blood or gore, but from what the monster represents. Godzilla is the embodiment of a vengeful force of nature. It can represent nuclear weapons or represent natural disaster. After all, nuclear weapons can change and affect the climate. In that time for a Japanese audience, it was scary to imagine their city destroyed after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, something that still haunts them to this day.
The missile they're going to use is the B-83, which is 75 times stronger than the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. I won't see a third bomb dropped on the homeland of my grandmother.
What makes Godzilla scary is that it is outside of our control. In our worldview of dominance and control over everything, Godzilla is a reminder that control is just an illusion. What frightens us the most is what we're unable to control, like death, plagues, or natural disasters. And the things we tend to control, we often tend to abuse, unleashing something that's outside of our control to punish us for our arrogance. Its destructive force comes similar to any natural disasters like tsunamis or tornadoes. Metaphorically speaking, it can be felt but not touched. The horror in Shin Godzilla is updated from nuclear destruction into natural destruction. In our modern fear of climate change, the film references the tsunami earthquake from Tohoku in 2011, as well as the Fukushima nuclear disaster that same year due to the tsunami. From nuclear to natural destruction, who knows if Godzilla could later evolve into representing a virus, referencing our current pandemic with COVID-19.
Gojira's radioactive plume blew out to sea, but contamination is still widespread.
In the original, Godzilla was a million-year-old dinosaur whose home got destroyed by the hydrogen bomb. Its contact with radiation mutated his body to grow spikes in his back that can shoot radioactive fire from his mouth. In Shin Godzilla, it's an animal that's horrifically mutated from a radioactive parasite into a gigantic monster. We witness all of his transformations as he grows larger, more disfigured, and more dangerous. It can shoot lasers from its mouth, its back, and even its tail, something the other Godzillas had never done. Another thing the new Godzilla does the others hadn't done was give a glimpse of what is in its mind to what some fans have considered as the most tragic of all the Godzillas. Not to say the original didn't have its tragic moments. I mean, the monster's home is invaded at the beginning, and at the end it's invaded where they kill him with a much deadlier weapon, though the main tragic focus was on the Japanese, not the monster itself, which is still very effective. When Godzilla unleashes his full destructive power over the city, there's a tragic melody that plays in the background, showing how the monster is feeling pain and distress at that moment.
B2 number 1 seems to have been down.
But there's no way.
Godzilla.
Through these lyrics, we realize that Godzilla doesn't really want to destroy. If anything, it only wants to die for what it's become. But it can't help but to keep fighting whenever its life is at risk. I can't help but to see the similarities to Carrie, how they're both baptized with blood by their oppressors, turning them into the infernal monsters they are known for. And what's tragic about this Godzilla is that it didn't choose to be like this. It was made this way by man and hates it. In its yearn for death, it has been condemned with eternal life. It's indestructible, nothing can hurt or kill it. Its damnation is to walk the earth as a sign of terror, where no one will help or show pity to it. The only thing that's left for him is survive based on his animal instincts. Even his roars are speculated that they're not due to causing fear or dominance, but it's due to the pain it feels during his transformation, whenever it gets attacked, or the radioactive blast that burns inside of him.
Maybe 2 hours? And it did all this?
No. It's our fault.
Luckily, both Godzilla films don't waste any time focusing on unnecessary human subplots, like family dysfunction or divorced couple, as it always is in American films.
You're still mad at me?
Well, he left without a phone call, a letter, nothing. All this time, yeah.
If any human is present, is to add to the main focus, that is Godzilla. One of the moral dilemmas both films argue is how to eliminate this natural problem. Is it with more violence? Is it to build much stronger weapons for intimidation? These dilemmas are still present in Shin Godzilla, but they're better fleshed out in the original for how interesting the characters are. Dr. Serizawa is a scientist that creates a deadlier weapon capable of destroying Godzilla. But his trauma with the hydrogen bomb makes him refuse to share his secret out of fear that man will one day use his work for the wrong reasons. After viewing the Japanese suffer because of Godzilla, he uses the weapon, ultimately sacrificing himself to kill the monster. Though a necessary evil, the pressure to act quickly didn't give them time to learn more about this problem and how to solve it better next time, other than just use more violence. Which begs the question, is there still any humanity left in us? Dr. Yaman is a paleontologist who's more insistent in studying the creature rather than destroy it. But once he witnesses the destruction the monster does, he has a change of heart and decides it's better to destroy it. While his intentions were to use cleverness to defeat the monster, the pressure in us always pushes us for our first and simple solution, that is to use more violence. Despite that, their personal dilemmas are clearly understandable to why they give in to this pressure. In Shin Godzilla, they actually give themselves the time to study the creature before they unleash a deadlier weapon as their last resort. Ultimately, it's not violence that prevails, but it's man's cleverness that defeats the monster, as Dr. Yaman would have hoped for. Though it's not easy to see it that way in the new film, due to the characters being so dry and serious all the time. Not to say there isn't some colorful characters.
We're relying on you, a crack team of lone wolves, nerds, troublemakers, academic heretics, freaks, and general pains in the butt of the bureaucracy.
There's of course some nerdy outcast scientist. There's this lady that wants to be president of the United States. There is dark comedy in it. And the way the film is shot, with the close-ups and the camera standing still, I feel like I'm watching a live-action anime. And at times, it does look like anime. And that's obvious since it was directed by the same person that made the popular anime show Evangelion. But being too serious doesn't always mean bad. The film not only makes a statement to the incompetent bureaucracy that is slow to act,
We did, wasting time with our response.
but reacts to what if Godzilla was real and came from Japan. The US would interfere with Japanese policies, the economy would go downhill, information would go rapid in social media, others would view it as the end of the world, question their religion, maybe social justice warriors would defend Godzilla, maybe even worship it. Eventually, the main dilemma from both films is that we shouldn't react quickly through force, but with patience and intelligence to preserve any humanity that's still left in us. So whether you look at Godzilla as just garbage B-movies and cheap suits, or mindless entertainment, there is something meaningful about Godzilla that has made it last long and relevant to this day. The monster serves as a reflection to the only thing that can lead to human extinction: us. Whether it's by nuclear weapons, natural disasters, or plagues that could later be represented in future films like COVID-19. Godzilla is the embodiment of nature punishing us for our greedy yearn for power and control. While the original ends in a pessimistic but hopeful plea for peace and unity, Shin Godzilla stays confirmed that our crave for mass destruction will never end. It can only be contained for a moment until the next disaster is unleashed, just like Godzilla gets contained, waiting to be unleashed and devour innocent lives, as it is symbolized with its tail.
Now Japan, no. All mankind must coexist with Gojira.
Ultimately, as long as we find different ways to kill each other, Godzilla will remain as relevant, living up to its name as God Incarnate.
Gojira means God incarnate.
A violent one.
Whether you view it as nature's wrath or God's wrath upon the earth, that is how it lives up to its name.
Godzilla, truly a god incarnate.
Now, children, what did we learn today? That is, if we could just put our guns down, hold hands, make a prayer of unity and peace, see the good in us, and maybe, just maybe, prove to the world that what truly prevails in the end is love and compassion over others. No! It's that Americans don't know how to make a good Godzilla film. That's the moral message. After all, they already had their several chances. One of them was bad, the other one was blah, and now that I think about it, this one was kinda blah. Though I gotta be honest, I have a guilty pleasure for this one. After all, you wanna know where I first discovered Singing in the Rain? No. Much more disturbing. Matthew Broderick. Boy, I'm surprised how Matthew Broderick has shaped my taste in music. Or lack of thereof. So what do you think of Godzilla? Do you like the franchise? You do not care about the franchise? Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe for more content. Now, for those of you wondering where have I been, I've been pretty busy with other stuff that I've been putting more time and effort, and the last thing that's been on my mind have been movies. But I'm still gonna be here, and hopefully you tune in next time for more reviews to come. So for now, that's it for today. Ciao!
Pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum.